In level 3, we will be evaluating complex numbers again, but we'll be working a lot with exponents. So before we start the examples, let's look at some patterns when we raise I to different powers. I to the first power is just I. Of course, it's the square root of -1, but we don't leave our answer that way if we're leaving it in terms of I. I to the second power, we already said, is the square root of -1 squared, which the square and square root cancel, comes out to -1. Okay. I to the third power is I to the second times another I. We said that I to the second was -1, so we get -1 times I, which is -I. I to the fourth power is I to the third times another I. And we just determined that I to the third is -I times I gives us -I squared. But I squared is -1, so we get -1, which comes out to +1. So I to the fourth is +1. Now let's go to I to the fifth power. I to the fifth is going to be I to the fourth times another I. I to the fourth was 1 times I gives us I. I to the sixth is I to the fifth times another I. I to the fifth was I times another I gives us I squared. And I squared is -1. I to the seventh is I to the sixth times another I. I to the sixth was -1 times I gives us -I. I to the eighth would be I to the seventh times I. And I to the seventh was -I times I gives us -I squared, which is negative times -1, +1. And if you notice, these first four repeat, and they will continue to repeat. So I to the ninth is going to be back to I. I to the 10th is going to be -1, and so on. So we get a pattern that repeats every 4 terms. Whenever you have an exponent that is a multiple of 4, like I to the 4th, I to the 8th, and so on, it will always be 1. So I to the 4th, I to the 8th, I to the 12th, I to the 16th, I to the 20th, and so on, will all equal +1. So if your exponent is a multiple of 4, it will equal +1. Now, if your exponent is even, but it's not a multiple of 4, it's going to equal -1. So we're looking at I to the second, I to the sixth. So I to the second power, I to the sixth power, I to the 10th power, I to the 14th power, I to the 18th power. These are all even exponents that are not multiples of 4. They will all be the same as I squared, which is -1. Now looking at our odd powers, if you have an odd power that is 1 more than a multiple of 4, like I to the 5th or I to the 9th, they will always be the same as I to the first power. So I to the first, I to the fifth, I to the ninth, I to the 13th, I to the 17th, and so on. These will all just equal I. And these exponents are all one more than a multiple of 4. So, for example, I to the 5th is right after I to the 4th, which is a multiple of 4. I to the 9th is right after I to the 8th, which is a multiple of 4. So always think about where the number is in relation to its closest multiple of 4. I to the 13th, its closest multiple of 4 is I to the 12th, it's one more. Now, if you have an odd power that's one less than a multiple of 4, it's going to equal I to the third. So that is I to the third, I to the 7th, and so on. So I to the third, I to the 7th, I to the 11th, I to the 15th, I to the 19th, and so on. These will all equal I to the third, which is negative I. So if we think about our closest multiple of 4, I to the third is one less than a multiple of 4. I to the 7th, that's 7 is one less than 8, so again, one less than a multiple of 4. I to the 11th, our closest multiple of 4 is 12, that's one less, and so on. So these guys are all one less than a multiple of 4. They all equal negative I. So if you can remember this pattern for the first 4, and then remember that it just keeps repeating, that's how you're going to tackle these problems in level 3. My advice when you're doing these is to jot down, from memory, the first 4 powers of I. So I to the first is just I to the second is negative 1, I to the third is negative I to the fourth is positive 1. And then for other exponents, we're going to just try and relate them to these 4 because those 4 just keep repeating. So if I look at I to the 26th, first I ask myself, is it even or odd? It's even. So it's either going to be the same as I to the second or I to the fourth. Now, to determine which one it's going to be the same as, I ask myself, is it a multiple of 4 or is it not a multiple of 4? 26 is not a multiple of 4, so it's not going to be the same as I to the fourth. It's going to be the same as I squared. So I to the 26th will be negative, it's the same as I squared, which is negative 1. Okay, following that same idea, first we're going to use exponent rules to simplify this one. So I would multiply my 3 and 5, and we get 15. And when I multiply I to the 15th times I to the 30th, following my exponent rules, I'm going to add those exponents, and I get I to the 45th. Now I'm going to simplify I to the 45th, and I go back over to my 4 i's, and I figure out which one it's the same as. I to the 45th is an odd power, so it's either going to be the same as I to the first or I to the third. Now I have to figure out, is it one more than a power of 4, or than a multiple of 4, or one less than a multiple of 4? So if I think about 45, what's the closest multiple of 4? The closest multiple of 4 is 44. And 45 is one more than 44. So it's going to be the same as I to the first power, or just I. So this is 15I. Okay, for the next one, same idea, but we're going to look for a pattern. I to the second power is negative 1. I to the fourth power is 1. I to the sixth is going to be the same as I to the second, it's negative 1. I to the 8th is the same as I to the 4th, it's positive 1. I to the 10th is the same as I squared, it's negative 1. And so those were just alternating signs. These two cancel, and we're left with negative 1.